Chapter 9. Cody ran into the bathroom and entered a stall. He'd already started undoing his leotard so he could sit on the toilet. He couldn't believe he hadn't thought of this dilemma before leaving his house. If only he had gotten a hotel room. He hated using public restrooms, but he lucked out and found this one empty. He was tempted to lock the door altogether in order to have the whole restroom to himself, but he was already sitting on the toilet, ready for a real steamer. Though he was incredibly skinny, so much so that people thought he was either sick or anorexic, he could really put away large amounts of food. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened. Cody had just been about to push when he heard the creak of hinges. This was the main reason he hated using public bathrooms, making embarrassing noises when others were around. He waited, hoping the person would piss quickly and leave, but instead he saw a pair of blue-booted feet walk up to his stall door and stand there. Someone was just outside, staring at Cody's door. Whoever it was wore yellow spandex and had gigantic calves, bigger than any Cody had ever seen on a real person. The large man continued to stand there. Cody's stomach protested as he continued to wait for the person to leave. A few seconds later, the large man finally turned and walked away. Cody heard the door open and close again. He sighed and went to work. A few minutes later, he wiped, flushed, and left the stall. Almost immediately, he was seized from behind and lifted from the floor. Something wrapped around his arms and chest. His breath was squeezed from his lungs, causing him to grunt. The blood rushed to his face, and his ribs felt like they would collapse any second. Standing in front of him was a small blond boy wearing a yellow spandex suit with red Speedos, cape, gloves, and boots. He stared at Cody with wide, shocked eyes. "What do I do?" the blonde asked. "Whatever you want," a deep voice said behind Cody. "Just avoid his face. I don't want to clean up any blood." Cody realized he was being hugged tightly by a giant. He looked down at the massive arms that held him off the floor. He tried to draw a breath, but found it difficult. The little superhero stepped closer to Cody, studying him. "Try some gut punches," the giant suggested as he leaned back a little, exposing Cody's stomach in the process. Blondie made a fist, reached back, and punched Cody. Cody barely felt it, considering he was still in shock. The giant said, "Punch harder." Blondie did. Cody felt it a little more that time. Garth punched the guy with the purple dreadlocks repeatedly in the stomach. The guy's face was red, turning blue. "Let him go," Garth said. "He can't feel anything." Panzer grinned and opened his arms. The skinny, black leotard guy fell to the floor, gasping. Garth quickly straddled him and grabbed his throat with his left hand while punching him in the stomach with the right. The boy started coughing blood, but Garth didn't care. He kept punching. He didn't see the skinny young man anymore. He saw his own father. He saw Simon Ferguson looking down upon him in the hospital bed and telling him, "You can't even kill yourself right." Garth grabbed his father's throat and squeezed as hard as he could. "I wish you'd gone through with it," Dad managed to say through his closed throat. "Would have done me a favor. You got that craziness from your mom. The world doesn't need people like you, Garth." Garth looked from the red, bloated face to his own wrists, where the scars were still visible under the gloves. Every time he saw those scars, he thought of the worst moments of his life. He cut across the veins instead of up and down. The doctors were able to stitch him up and save his life. His father was right. He had screwed up his own suicide. He'd wanted to do it the same way Mom had. Garth looked from his wrists to his father, but Dad's face was no longer there. A much younger man with purple dreadlocks lay there, his face blue, his tongue sticking out. Garth had subconsciously felt the man's throat collapse in his grip, but he couldn't remember when. How long had he been choking this guy? Garth let go and stood up. He heard a laugh behind him. "Good job," Panzer said. "How did that feel?" Garth took a deep breath to calm his heart. "I want more." Panzer laughed again. "You'll get more, my friend. Much more." "What do we do with him?" "I'll take care of him. Take a break. You just did something significant." "I guess." Panzer had entered a stall, but at those words, he came back out. "No, I guess. You did something special, bud. You killed with your bare hands. I have to be honest, I was worried you wouldn't be able to pull off your plan tomorrow, but now I have no doubt. Look at this guy." He pointed to the body. "I wouldn't have guessed you had that much strength in you." "I imagined my dad." Panzer nodded. "Whatever works." The skinny boy suddenly popped up, his eyes wide. Before Garth could react, Panzer punched the boy in the face. He dropped like a puppet with severed strings, his head striking the toilet seat. His neck bent at an awkward angle. "Christ, that scared me," Panzer said with a laugh. He re-entered the stall and stood on the toilet seat. Garth watched him knock a ceiling tile out of the way. Panzer was so tall, he practically had to bend over to avoid touching the ceiling with his head. He easily placed the dead body up there. "There was blood coming out of his mouth," Garth said nervously. "Don't worry about it. By the time anyone finds him, they'll have bigger problems on their hands."